That's us now live. Thank you. That's us now live.
Kirsty, I can't hear you at all now. Can't hear anything.
We can hear you, Elaine.
Yeah, I can't hear you. I see people very loudly, but I can't hear you at all. There's a problem with connecting with Easterbrook, I think. It's- 'cause- 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 'cause-
That's us live now, Elaine.
Okay. Can everybody hear each other? I'm not sure whether they can hear us in the hall.
We can hear you fine in the hall.
Okay. Shall we start? Well, I'll attempt to start, shall I? And see whether it works. If it just isn't working from mine, we'll have to hand over to somebody else to chair it. Can I start off by welcoming our board members and advisors and say it's good to see you if we can see each other, all right? Can I give a special welcome to the members of the Youth Council who are joining us for the whole meeting and are in Easterbrook Hall today. And they are Councillor Murray Thompson from Mid and Upper Nithsdale, Cameron Green MSYP for Dumfries, Councillor Bailey Wright from Mid and Upper Nithsdale, Councillor Lindsay Thompson from Castle Douglas and Crockett Ford, Councillor Darry Foster, Annandale East and Eskdale, and Councillor Natasha O'Neill, Annandale South Youth Councillor. And could I remind members that we're being live streamed today to allow for public access to our discussion, whether attendance in person is not possible. Hopefully by this stage we're all familiar with online meetings and everything will run smoothly, although it hasn't been running smoothly so far. But could I suggest that you keep your cameras and microphones off unless you're speaking, and please type speak in the chat function or use the raise your hand function if you would like to contribute, and hopefully I will get a list of who's asking to speak if I can't see you. Kirsty is going to assist me in ensuring, or trying to ensure, that I get to everyone. But if all else fails, put on your camera and wave, and Kirsty may see you in that. Liz, could I ask you to give us the position about attendance?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. We have apologies from Gavin Stevenson of Dumfries and Galloway Council, with Derek Crichton as his representative, and apologies from Linda Jones from Police Scotland, who's represented by Mark Hollis. We have apologies from Jeff Ace and Nick Morris of NHS, Dumfries and Galloway, Russell Griggs from South of Scotland Enterprise, Hugh Carr from Dumfries and Galloway College, and Andrew Wood of Spestrans, with no substitutes. In the hall, there's myself, Liz Manson, Kirsty Peden, Norma Austin Hart from Third Sector, Dumfries and Galloway, as you've already said, our youth councillors, and we have a number of support officers from youth services. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. So if we could go over to our first item, which is the draft minute of our last meeting, which is here for approval. And can I ask if people have any queries on the minute, and whether people are happy to approve the minute? And I'll take silence as agreement unless people start indicating that they disagree with the minute. So do people have any queries or comments? And I'm not seeing any hands up or any indication of people wishing to speak. So I'll take that as approved and proceed to agenda item 2, which is a presentation from the Dumfries and Galloway Youth Council Leadership Group. Members will recall that this had been planned as a joint meeting between our board and the whole of the Youth Council. However, given the restrictions on travel and social distancing, this has been postponed until next year, or as soon as it's possible. Hopefully that will be next year. And we have the Youth Council Leadership Group with us today. Clearly, the impact of COVID on young people is a particular issue for us all, and I trust members have read the background paper on this. It's certainly something that demands our attention. And could I now invite our Youth Council members to give us a presentation on their work to date and their future plans. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for inviting us along today. Dumfries and Galloway Youth Council were elected on April 1st last year, and since then we've been working on how to improve young people who are included in decision making. The Regional Youth Council has positions for 35 young people and 3 types roles. We have 24 ward youth councillors working out as 2 per area, who are responsible for representing the views of young people in their local communities. We have 7 nominated youth councillors, 1 for each nominated group, who are responsible for representing the views of young people across the region who identify as young carer, care experienced, young parent, ethnic minority, gypsy or traveller, additional support needs or disability, LGBT identity. And 4 members of the Scottish Youth Parliament working out as 2 for the East and 2 for the West. MSYPs are responsible for taking forward the views and concerns and priorities of young people on a national level to decision makers and the Scottish Parliament. The Youth Council meets regionally and on a locally or nominated basis. We have 3 regional priorities between 10 to 12 members, making each subgroup responsible for taking forward actions on mental health and wellbeing, the environment and climate change, and rights and inequalities and discrimination. In January this year, we created and started working on local action plans to make change in our local areas and on behalf of the groups we represent. In addition to the above core Youth Council business, we also work alongside the Council and other community planning partners to design, participate in or carry out consultations to make sure that young people's voices are heard in service, planning and decision making. And once per year, we are taking part in a joint meeting with Dumfries and Galloway Youth Council to put forward the views and priorities of young people across the region. Individually, members are involved in volunteering projects, groups, committees and the local communities to make sure we're able to effectively represent our areas.
Since April, the Youth Council have participated in a series of transformation events facilitated by Dumfries and Galloway Council looking at protecting vulnerable young people, costs and fees, education and transport. Participated in training and youth and workshops to support and prepare us for our roles as Youth Council members. Delivered a workshop at the Children, Young People and Power Conference organised by Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway. Designed and led the consultation and found out the impact of COVID-19 on young people throughout the region that we'll speak about later. Organised community beach cleans as part of the Great British September Clean with young people in Langham, Dumfries, Annan, Mid Galloway and Stranraer, and planned and delivered Roots 2.0, the region's activist and volunteer gathering. Most recently, we have developed a mini information series focused on invisible conditions and disabilities, rights and anti-bullying as part of the National Awareness Weeks, with rights and anti-bullying campaigns running later this month. Work with the community asset team to identify how local parks can become more teenage friendly, taken part in the anti-poverty strategy focus group, reviewed the instrumental music service and put forward recommendation that would improve the service. We've also, and been between now and Christmas, we've organised to deliver 8 online workshops focused on mental health, environmental issues and equalities.
In April, Young Scot, YouthLink Scotland and other national organisations ran a Scotland-wide consultation to gather the voices, concerns and priorities of young people. The lockdown findings report was circulated to partners and decision makers across the country and informed a number of key decisions affecting young people. In June, it was decided that we would carry out a localised version. Although the findings included young people living in Dumfries and Galloway, it felt like carrying out a consultation 3 months into the pandemic with a larger group of young people would help community planning partners to meet the needs of young people in the region. The consultation was live for 3 weeks and the findings were published 2 weeks after the closing date. A total of 537 young people participated aged 11 to 25 from every ward in the region between July 13th and August 3rd. The steering group who took this forward included representatives from the Regional Youth Council and the Regional Parent Forum, Dumfries and Galloway Council and NHS, Police Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway College and Job Centre Plus, and a range of third sector partners including Cat Strand, YMCA, LGBT Youth Scotland, Citizens Advice and Dumfries and Galloway Multicultural Association. Mental health, fears for the future and friendships were things around 1 in 5 young people found themselves to be worrying about all the time. The report breaks down the findings, further looking at the issues young people were most or least concerned about. The findings are intended to be a snapshot and a guide for organisations and services working with young people to inform and shape their planning and delivery. Breaking down the data reported, there has not been one universal experience of the pandemic, although there are similar numbers reporting concerns about food, money, welfare and their relationship with family members. This is not to say that young people are less affected, it just depends on their own circumstances at home. The last figure we would like to highlight is the number of young people without access to a device, i.e. a phone, laptop or tablet for learning or social purposes. The pandemic has caused a fundamental change in how services for young people are delivered. However, we feel it is important to recognise that not all young people have the devices or connectivity needed to use these services.
The findings are available for any organisation, service or group working with young people. Similar to 10,000 Voices, this report can be a resource for anyone looking to better understand these issues experienced by young people in our region or on a locality board level. The two reports can be used together to gain a clearer understanding of the concerns, priorities and needs of young people in Dumfries and Galloway. Thank you again for inviting us to attend, and we hope the report will be useful for your organisation in the future.
Thank you for that. That was interesting, getting feedback from somewhere. Can I invite any questions? People hopefully have had the chance to read the background report to which the young people referred. So can I ask anybody if you've got any questions? And I think it might be easier to use the speak function because I can see whether people have typed in the speak function. So could you do that, please? And I invite questions, comments. Norma.
Thank you, Elaine, and thanks to the members of the Youth Council and the MSYP and Reagan also for giving us such a good insight into the work that you've been doing. I just wanted to again thank those from the Youth Council that were involved in our event, the inaugural meeting of the Third Sector Children and Young People's Forum, which we set up just at the back end of last year. It has only met once since then, of course, because of the pandemic, but we do have another meeting lined up for December. The forum is aimed at third sector organisations which work with young people and provide services to young people. This means that although we do have a couple of young people who attend the forum, many could not even generously be described as young, being blunt about it. So I would like to suggest to the Youth Council that we maybe arrange a meeting. I can do this through Reagan if that would be appropriate, to discuss how we might work together to ensure that there is the opportunity for young people to have a direct voice in the work of the forum, whether that's through participation directly with the Youth Council or not. But that would be for you to decide. But I'd like to suggest, I'm seeing some nods, so that's encouraging. I'll make a note and I'll get in touch with Reagan to discuss that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Norma. That's a useful offer, I think, which the young people will appreciate. Helen, I want to come in and read your comment that you put on the chat function.
Yes, of course, it's difficult when it's half online, half live. No, I just wanted to sort of reinforce Norma's point. I thought it was an excellent report, and it'll be very useful, certainly to a lot of third sector organisations that work with young people, to really inform them and make sure that we are meeting the needs of them. I'm sure that's true for other organisations as well, other sectors. But no, great. And in the absence of having an actual young person on our board, which is something a lot of us do struggle with, then reports like this really add a lot of value. So thank you.
Yes, certainly this came to council as well, and we feel that it's a very useful report, and it'll help to inform our work with the Youth Council in the future. And we're certainly looking forward to, we had, just before lockdown, we had one joint meeting with the whole of the Youth Council, which was very helpful. And we're certainly looking forward to having another meeting. We would have had it by now had it not been for COVID. And we're certainly looking forward to another meeting and take forward some of the issues that we jointly discovered together. Okay, anybody else have comments? Of course, the young people are very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, and they may well have questions of us on some of the other agenda items. Okay. I'm not seeing anything else, so I just think it just to thank the young people for all their work, for their report and for their presentation to us today. Thank you very much. Can we move on to the third item? And the third item is the reason that we met a little earlier than usual today, because I felt that we probably needed time, given the rapidity of developments with the COVID response, recovery and renewal, that we should have time to discuss that fully. And I'm first of all going to ask Richard Grieveson, who's the Chief Officer responsible for response, recovery and renewal. I'm going to ask Richard to give us an update on the response activity, and I'm also going to ask Norma, the Chair of the Partnership Recovery Group, to give us a background. She's actually provided us with a background report, and I think she's going to speak to that. Richard.
Sorry, Chair. It's Mark Thompson here. Richard couldn't make it this morning, so I'm covering for him. But regardless, happy to give an update, and good morning, everybody. So whilst we have seen indications of a levelling off of positive cases in the region, the numbers we are seeing remain a concern. We're continuing to see evidence of community transmission with cases spread right across the region. With that in mind, Scottish Government confirmed this week that Dumfries and Galloway will remain in level 2 of the local protection levels, at least until the next review point. It's probably important to recognise the significant contribution made by the wider community in following the government guidance and the restrictions. Doing so makes a significant difference to infection levels we see, and will continue to do so in the coming weeks. We recognise the significant sacrifices that means everybody has to undertake in doing so. It's probably also important to recognise the efforts and the work of colleagues in public health, the Health and Social Care Partnership, education and the voluntary sector in terms of the contribution they make to managing, mitigating and supporting positive cases and close contacts in a wide range of settings in the region as this pandemic continues. Work is ongoing in incident management teams to disrupt the spread of the disease, and in parallel there's a lot of work progressing to provide key supports to those infected in terms of healthcare, well-being, financial supports to individuals, financial support and advice to businesses, and basics, key essentials such as community food provision. In recognition of the wider concurrent risks that we're going to face this winter as a region, the Local Resilience Partnership are intending to change their operating model through the winter to take an all-risks approach. And when I talk about concurrent risks, what I'm really looking to describe is, in addition to COVID-19 and the challenges that brings, we are also facing some challenges and potential disruption from EU exit, from severe winter weather, from seasonal flu, and from some emerging animal health concerns we have with regards to avian influenza, which will affect poultry producers. So this approach that we will be taking, looking at this all risks and actually making sure that we've got a kind of harmonised approach to managing disruption and the consequences of disruption, mirrors the approach which is going to get taken nationally by Scottish Government and some of our national partners with the implementation of a national coordination centre, which we will link in with to ensure that the appropriate flow of information up and down from national to local. I think I also want to mention board members will have noted the positive news that emerged recently regarding a vaccine, and just want to highlight that local partners certainly within the Local Resilience Partnership are absolutely committed to working together to support the NHS in delivering what will be a significant mass vaccination programme when that time comes. Obviously there's still a lot of detail and a lot of activity that will need to be considered as part of that, but there is an absolute commitment from the Local Resilience Partnership to work in partnership with the NHS in that regard. In the meantime, continuing to follow the guidelines and adhere to restrictions is absolutely key in mitigating further spread of the disease in Dumfries and Galloway, and it will help us avoid facing more stringent restrictions in the coming weeks. I think I'll leave it there, and I'm more than happy to take any questions on those aspects.
Do members have any questions for Mark at this stage? Could you type in the chat function if you have anything? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. I'm not seeing any hands up either. So can I then hand on to Norma?
Sorry,
Norma,
Councillor Murray. Chair, we've got Councillor Crothers looking to come in.
Councillor Crothers.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick remark in regards to the impact that flu of influenza have. So here, I'm hearing different things. Okay, it's got to be a harder impact because of what's going on, but actually because of social distancing and the measures that individuals are taking in regards to protecting themselves through COVID, it'll have a positive impact in regards to less cases in place. It might be a positive. Are you hearing anything like that?
I'm really sorry, Councillor Crothers. I really struggled to hear what you were saying there. Is there any chance you could repeat that? Apologies.
Is that any better, Mark? Just want to carry on?
Yeah, that's slightly better, Ian. I'll try and listen closely.
Right. Sorry, just my location. Okay, so just in regards to, I'm hearing that because of a level of trying to protect the transmission of COVID, that's going to have a positive impact on influenza and how it spreads this year. Are you hearing anything to that in that kind of measure?
I think whilst there's been no formal indication of that, I think that actually is an appropriate point. The measures that are taken to protect the public and the measures that individuals take to protect themselves from contracting COVID will absolutely have a positive impact on reducing the risks of contracting seasonal flu as well. Absolutely.
Thanks, Alex. Sorry about the connection.
I think Ian's having problems with this connection. I'm having problems with him unmuting myself as well for some reason.
Chair, you're on mute. That's you back.
Okay, yeah, for some reason I'm being muted and unmuted by somebody else. I'm not quite sure why or how.
You're muted again, Chair, sorry.
I'm not doing this. I'm just wondering if there's somebody else is doing that's doing this. Okay, I'll continue. I think Ian was having a bit of a problem with his connection, but I hope he and Mark managed to communicate sufficiently to get the question answered. Any other questions for Mark before we progress to asking Norma to give us a brief presentation on the piece of work that the third sector have done on the response and recovery? Anything else for Mark, first of all? Okay, can we hand over to Norma, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. And it's perhaps worth saying before I go into the presentation that I have been working with Lee Seaton from Richard Grieveson's team on the recovery subgroup. Unfortunately, we've had to put things on hold a little bit because of the spike that the COVID spike that's just occurred. But we are discussing how to take forward the recovery plan, and no doubt the board will get an update on that in the near future. I wanted to just take a little bit of your time to talk through just the highlights of the report that was circulated in advance of this meeting. And the report rejoices in the title of South of Scotland Third Sector a partnership approach to COVID-19 response and recovery planning. We just call it the big report to make life easier. I'm going to talk a little bit about the approach we took to producing this report, which, by the way, is dated August 2020, so it's very much a snapshot. A little bit about the report, a little bit about the key messages that came out of the work that we did with the third sector during that time, the principles that emerged, and probably most importantly, the recommended actions that are in the report going forward and the next steps. So, just to take you through briefly the approach that we took. Before COVID started, the two third sector interfaces in Dumfries and Galloway and the part of the Borders third sector interface in Berwickshire, we agreed that it would be worth having a conversation with the third sector about third sector and South of Scotland enterprise, because we knew at that point that SOSE was going to be launched on the 1st of April, and we thought we will start to discuss how we would like to define the relationship with South of Scotland enterprise from the third sector's point of view. So we planned two meetings, one in Dumfries and Galloway, one in the Borders, and I don't need to explain why both of those meetings were cancelled in the second and third weeks of March, and our lives were then taken over, like yours, with COVID-19. However, after a few weeks of that, we realised that South of Scotland enterprise was still emerging, and now we had a crisis to deal with. So we thought that we would change plans, and instead of having two meetings, that we would use one-to-one interviews with third sector organisations to have an in-depth snapshot of the third sector and its response to COVID. So I think it's important to be clear about this. This was not intended to be a broad consultation. It was intended to be a really detailed study of around about 39, just under 40 organisations. And we did this in one-to-one interviews. 4 interviewers were involved, myself, my colleague from Berwickshire, and 2 others who will be well known to many of you, Pip Tabor from the Southern Upland Partnership and Andrew Ward from the Cretan Initiative. And we went back, our starting point was the guest list who had been invited to the March meetings, and we went back to them and invited them for interviews. Eventually, we undertook between us 39 interviews over May and July. The analysis and the write-up took place in August, and the report was published on the 11th of September, and you have it here. So the key messages that came out of this, and I think this will be familiar, I hope, to all of you, that the third sector responded amazingly quickly and impressively to the COVID-19 challenge. And we also found, of course, that our multi-agency partnerships worked well. There were some great examples of partnership working across the south of Scotland. And in some situations, the lines between the private, the community and the third sector got blurred a bit. I think of the example in Langham, where the co-op in Langham used volunteers to deliver food parcels and food boxes to those who were shielding and self-isolating. And the line started to blur, which we found very encouraging. And we also found from funders that there was a terrific flexibility about funding to third sector organisations, where the funders understood that it was going to be difficult to report and monitor perhaps to the same degree that we normally would. So there was flexibility from our local and national funders. Volunteers, of course, were key. At one point we had 1,700 volunteers on our volunteer register, and they were operating in partnership with the community councils and the resilience groups across the region. And it, for all of us, has brought in new ways of working and innovative ways of working, some of which we'll probably be living with for some time, even after the pandemic has passed. And as another key message, we found there's no shortage of ambition in the third sector for what it can do. The report proposes 7 principles. 1, there should be nothing about us without us, nothing about the third sector that involves the third sector without working with us, particularly in the development and design of services that third sector organisations will then be asked to deliver. Let's keep it local and keep it place-based. I know that this is something that's familiar to us now, and we know that South of Scotland Enterprise will be emphasising the place-based approach. And let's remember that beneficiaries are and should be at the heart of everything we do. Our financial sustainability in the third sector is vital. It's not all about money, but we need income in order to deliver services. Stating the obvious, volunteers are the lifeblood of communities and will continue to be so. And digital working is our default. We now do that almost as second nature, technical issues notwithstanding. And let's not forget the third sector is a key employer in the south of Scotland. Around 5,000 people are employed in full-time and part-time jobs in the third sector. And this will become even more important as we face the emergence out of the crisis. So, to move on to the recommended actions that are in the report, I make no apology for saying that some of these are extremely ambitious wishes, and they are for actions that are recommended not just for the third sector, but for statutory agencies. And some of them, frankly, were recommended actions before the crisis, but they've been brought into sharp relief now that the crisis is here. So the third sector, the two third sector interfaces really need to maximise their role, the role that they're given by Scottish Government to be the voice of the sector, and we need to do that more and louder and better. But we would also like there to be more joined-up communications with the sector. There are lots of examples where information and requests are coming at us from lots of different angles, and we would like the communications to be much more joined up. The Regional Economic Partnership was suggested as the agency for leading on that. That is for them, of course, to take on. And linked to that is the development of an economic strategy for the south of Scotland, where the third sector and communities are front and centre of that strategy. Not just about the private sector, it has to be about communities and third sector as well, recognising their role. We want commissioning agencies, organisations that have money and the power to commission contracts to involve the third sector at all points in the delivery of a service, and that's again not new. We have developed multi-partnership working, and certainly in Dumfries and Galloway, and I believe in the borders, we have developed local hubs, which have worked really well throughout the pandemic, and we do intend with, and this was discussed by the Community Planning Partnership Board recently, to develop the locality hubs and to work together with all agencies at the local level in order to connect with the most vulnerable. We would like that. Oh, I've made this point again, so I don't need to make it again. Rattling on, we would like anchor organisations in the third sector to be through the locality hubs to deliver on community projects, rather than in certain circumstances it works better than trying to find a pan South of Scotland approach. But we would also like the locality hubs to be empowered to deliver streamlined services, to encourage a sort of single point of contact approach to third sector organisations. Commissioning agencies, we would like to move towards a person-centred procurement, purchasing, commissioning model, rather than merely about finance. I know this is contentious, so I'm going to just leave it at that and move on. A very important request that came out of, and recommendation that came out of our interviews, is that we, as an agency, Team South of Scotland, that we agree on a model or a set of models where we can measure social impact. This has been discussed for some time. I think the models are there. I think all we need is consensus building around what we use. But please, let's do this as soon as we can so that we can put in place the models and start with baselines now, so that in 3, 5 or 10 years' time, we've got the starting point for measuring social impact or social return on investment, whatever we end up with, whatever model we end up with. The funding, lots and lots of people said that Leader worked well in Dumfries and Galloway. I'm aware we did not get the same feedback in Borders, and that's a separate issue for us, of course, here and now. But Leader worked well. Let's take what worked well from that and ask South of Scotland Enterprise and others to consider using the expertise that came out of Leader. This last one on this slide, and there's only one more slide, you'll be glad to know, is again a contentious point, I know. Anyone who mentions wind farm community benefit funding in public can often be glad to live and tell the tale. Nevertheless, it reflects feedback that we get. We know that there are excellent models of distribution of wind farm community benefit funds. However, privately, we also know that it's some of the funds struggle to spend all their money or struggle to know if it's being spent wisely. So what we're suggesting is not anything draconian. On a voluntary basis, it would be helpful if South of Scotland Enterprise and or the local authorities were to facilitate a joined up use of the funding. And the best way I can explain this and to assuage any concerns about this would be to use the example of digital inclusion projects. We have good experience of administering digital inclusion projects by purchasing devices and getting them to people who are excluded, digitally excluded, and need them, and also finding volunteers to support them in the use. Now, if one of or several of our statutory agencies were to join up, or indeed with Third Sector, Dumfries and Galloway, if we were to join up and approach the wind farm community benefit funds on a voluntary basis and say, if you would like to participate in a project where we purchase the devices, we administer them to whomever you select to get them, and we will provide you with trained volunteers, then that would be something that possibly some of the wind farm community benefit funds would consider. There would be many advantages to them in terms of reduced cost of device, taking away the administrative burden of buying and distributing them, and also training volunteers. But it would be entirely voluntary, and the control of where the devices went and who the volunteers worked with would be entirely down to the wind farms. So I hope that will deal with any worries about that, at least for now. Last slide, just to rattle through. We would, in the third sector, like the statutory agencies to be more ambitious for their own targets in working with the third sector. Target to work with more of us. Target to commission more of us. Target to allocate greater percentages of your budget to services provided by the third sector. Be ambitious to work with us. We also found there are 4 areas kept coming back as being priorities particularly for COVID response and recovery. Community transport, given that there's unlikely to be much of a public transport service in the short to medium term, and digital inclusion I've talked about, employability and community empowerment. These all kept coming up. So there's lots of scope for developing multi-agency projects on these priority areas. And I think linked to that, we as the third sector interfaces could take a refreshed and invigorated approach to how we develop social enterprises, possibly in direct connection with those priority areas that I've just mentioned. We want to include volunteering and volunteer involving organisations in employability more effectively. They are there as an employer, but also as a provider of work experience and other positive advantages for people who are looking to transfer into new areas of employment. And that would also be relevant to the Youth Guarantee Scheme. And finally, we want to support all of this, create a South of Scotland Third Sector Employability Forum, which would work with the local employability forums that already exist, but would focus particularly on the interests and needs of the third sector employers participating in all these programmes. I hope that all made sense and wasn't too quick. Next steps are to take the report to stakeholders, and that's why I'm here today talking to you about it. But it's not just community planning partnership boards, it's the third sector itself, the local authorities, the Regional Economic Partnership, and I'll be speaking to them this afternoon about this, South of Scotland Enterprise already in conversation, Borderlands and Scottish Government. Probably more that I could add to that. We need to negotiate with these agencies on the recommended actions, watch out and identify for partnership projects for delivery, keep communicating our progress and success, review our progress, and I say with a little bit of hesitation, possibly undertake another exercise in the spring to see how people are feeling about things at that point, a year after COVID arrived. And that, Chair, is my presentation. I'm happy, of course, to take questions.
Okay, thanks. No. Right, I've gone off. Gone wrong, I've been booted off.
Just frustrated.
Been booted off, I'm afraid.
We can hear you okay, Chair.
I can't see anybody. I seem to have been booted off altogether.
We can certainly hear you in the hall okay. Perhaps others on the call.
I can't see anybody. It seems to be something to do with the spotlighting, I think. But anyway, can I ask if anybody has any questions? I see Jane Maitland has a question. Jane.
Thank you, Elaine. Elaine, I feel for you. I can just imagine it's really difficult. Norma, thank you very much indeed for that. You interestingly, there were two bits where I nearly fell off my chair reading the next actions. One was about the wind farm issue, and you have actually reasonably reassured me. Speaking as somebody who represents a ward in which there have been great difficulties in getting this sort of thing sorted out, I must admit my heart sank when I saw that. But you've helped me, I think. Am I managing to be heard? I've got the same problem. I can hear a bit of feedback. The only other thing I would like to ask you about, and you picked it up, you said yourself it was contentious, is about person-centred procurement model. Now, I'm afraid I don't know enough about this to understand what is being proposed. So I suppose rather than having a discussion about it here, I think maybe we just need to expand that so that we can understand.
Thanks, Jane.
Thanks,
oh, sorry. Thank you, Jane. I am happy to just say a little bit about the person-centred procurement model. It's contentious, I think, because lots of commissioning agencies feel it's unfair to involve third sector organisations in the design and development of a service idea before it's commissioned, because it gives them an unfair advantage when it comes to the competitive process of identifying a successful bidder. But there are ways of dealing with this. This is quite a complex area. I would be happy to either speak to you, Jane, offline, if that's what you were suggesting, or indeed come back to the board with more information.
Thank you. Jane, does that answer your question? I can see some hands up. Your hand's been up. Is that from previously?
Was that me, Elaine? Ian Covers?
From the previous one. And I think Derek got his hand up as well. Derek?
Thank you, Elaine. Thanks, Elaine. And just echo Jane's comments. I feel for you. So fully understand these things happen, but thank goodness Scotland didn't freeze last night, so we'll take the positive out of the situation. So we're doing fine. Thanks, Norma. Very helpful piece of work that's been done. So firstly, obviously, thanks to you, Third Sector D&G, and obviously the volunteers across the south of Scotland who, as the report highlights, have done simply stunning. Genuinely, thank you. I think it's important that we continue the dialogue, as you say yourself. The recommendations in some cases are quite ambitious. That's good. Good to be ambitious at this particular time. So simply to say that very comfortable in endorsing the recommendations, and would certainly welcome continued dialogue with you to ensure that we can strive towards these ambitions, and thanks again for all the hard work. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek.
Chair, Councillor Cruthers would like to come in.
Andy.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Like everyone else, I'm on a bit of a nightmare here. I can hear some people clear as a bell and others very garbled, and others just not at all. I suppose it just highlights what some of the youth councillors were saying earlier about connectivity being a huge issue, not just for young people, but for old pensioners like me as well. I've actually seen this report and presentation from Norma before in my IGB hat on, and we've recognised the importance of it, and Norma, as an advisory member of the IGB, and this report will be getting used as one of the tools as we drive forward the new joint commissioning plans for the IGB going forward from next year for the next 5 years. Norma's absolutely right. We need to recognise and have a person-centred approach, of course, which is NHS members know is an approach they take very, very, very clearly. That's one of their babies, and I think it's just a confirmation that the IGB will be using this report as some of the reference documents and way forwards as we strive to deliver a new strategic plan. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thanks, Andy. Now, Ian's got his hand up again, but I don't know whether that's just his technology playing up as well. Ian, I've got questions.
If you can hear me, I was in a bad signal there. Can you hear me okay, Elaine?
We can hear you now.
Thanks. So just two small points. Norman, if you don't mind, an ask is the first one, is to touch base with Liz Manson, if possible. The Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee of the Council is currently undertaking a piece of work on community asset transfers, and we're trying to identify a tool that, and a clear formula that allows us to get a value on health, economic and social values. So it'd be good to hear what your thoughts are there. And it was on the person-centred approach. Have you done any work in regards to the potential budget impact that would mean? Obviously, we all support that, but any work, any information in regards to that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. First of all, on the contact with Liz, of course, we'll pick that up. And we have actually been doing some work on the different models that there are for measuring social and well-being impacts. So hopefully I can be of use there. In terms of the procurement issue and person-centred, my understanding is that COSLA are doing some national level work on this with some local authorities, and that in the near future, probably early next year, there will be some work, some report coming out of COSLA on how local authorities they're doing this work, COSLA are doing it with SCVO. They jointly will produce a report which will, I believe, will come out to local authorities. What they're looking for from those local authority areas that aren't already involved in the working group are any excellent examples, and I certainly would be happy to take those forward. Perhaps that's something I could also raise with Liz, and Liz will explain to me who to speak to in the council about that. Hope that's helpful.
Very, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else indicating a wish to speak. Now, we had thought that somebody from the NHS might want to make a contribution to this, but I'm not sure that I know Jeff Ace isn't here. I'm not sure whether Nick is here, Nick Morris is here.
No, I'm afraid not, Chair. Due to other commitments and illness, we've not got NHS representation today.
Okay, I'm sure we'll be able to speak to them at another time. We just wanted to give them the opportunity, if they were able to be here, to make a contribution. I've got Andy. Andy wants to speak. Yeah, Andy's maybe going to speak on their behalf. Andy.
Thanks, Chair. Although I'm not here today as an NHS rep, I'm obviously an NHS non-exec board member. So I'll take back. I think Norma's already made some contact. I would hope positive contact with the NHS side of the partnership. So I'm happy to liaise with Norma to make sure the message gets back, to ensure that the message gets back to the NHS, exactly what we're trying to achieve here. So I'm happy to do that on your behalf, Chair, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Yeah, thank you. Well, I think we're a little bit ahead of time, but if we can progress to the next item, which is the annual reports by thematic partnership, and usually we would have received an annual report on each of the thematic partnerships throughout the year, reported to us by the executive group. But this has been a very different year for those partnerships. So instead, we decided to have short videos to watch, and hopefully the technology will work well enough for us to see those, to give us an overview. And I think it'll be an interesting way of doing things slightly different, reporting slightly differently. And I believe the video takes about 16 minutes, I believe. Thanks, Kirsty.
Chair of the Dumfries and Galloway Children's Services Executive Group, I'm pleased to offer the Community Planning Partnership Board an annual report on the operation of this group. 2020 was an important transition year for CSEG as it brought together the completion of the 2017 to 2020 plan while agreeing the plan for the next 3 years. Both of those duties have been met, with the plans and reports being with you and the relevant bodies for consideration by the end of this year. As a group, we've continued to meet regularly. We have good representation and, probably more importantly, regular and ongoing conversations between meetings to make sure we keep connected. In 2017 and 2018, we changed the cycle of meetings from weekly fast response to a 6 to 8 week cycle, and we felt that this would allow more detailed discussion with longer meetings. This was in response to the positive progress that was made from the previous inspection. Meeting less frequently has allowed officers and subgroups time between meetings to do the work and progress the actions, and this has been useful. We are aware of the risk in letting progress slow by meeting less frequently, but we are a mature enough group now to keep this under review. So in 2019, we met 6 times, and this year we have met 4 times. We didn't meet from April to July due to the COVID response arrangements. In addition to our regular CSEG meetings, we've held a number of Realigning Children's Services workshops with invitations extended across the partnership. These meetings were to discuss the results of the Children's Survey as part of the Realigning Children's Services Scottish Government programme. These workshops were very well attended, and they allowed facilitated discussions to agree the priorities for our 2020 to 23 plan. So our 2020 to 2023 plan was now based on the results of this Scottish Government multi-agency programme. The results were analysed by Scottish Government at school and cluster level. So these have also been made available at a local level for locality planning. We've also taken account of some of the other findings of work with young people, such as the 10,000 voices and lockdown lowdown, to sense check the Realigning Children's Services findings. So from this and from other evidence, we set our priorities for the next 3 years. Some of these are carryovers from the previous plan. Progress in implementing the Children's Services Plan has inevitably been impacted upon by the COVID-19 pandemic. When the implications of the pandemic became apparent in March this year, the Scottish Government gave partnerships the opportunity to continue with their existing plan for another year. However, our new 2020 to 23 plan was ready, and the aims identified by CSEG as priorities remain valid, and they provide a useful framework for identification of improvement activity, particularly around more vulnerable children and young people. So despite the impact of COVID-19, the priorities still stand as priorities. They're about supporting the well-being of young people and children with a focus on our most vulnerable. Going forwards, the ongoing challenges presented by COVID may mean we have to narrow our priorities or be more flexible with our timescales as the public health situation evolves. So I'm clear as Chair that we will have an overarching sense of risks, gaps and areas of greatest need, and that we coordinate our efforts across the partnership to address these in order to avoid any underlap of services. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I hope that you are well. For those of you who don't know me, I am Jamie Little, the Council's lead officer for the local housing strategy. This key document covers a range of topics and aims to support the delivery of the Council plan and a number of key related strategies. High quality housing underpins many aspects of people's lives, improving educational outcomes, enabling healthy living, regenerating deprived areas and providing employment. The local housing strategy sets out the Council's approach to statutory responsibilities, such as tackling fuel poverty, supporting the integration of adult health and social care, and improving property conditions across all sectors. Given the timing of this update, I want to focus on the delivery of the Council's Strategic Housing Investment Plan, due for submission to the Scottish Government in December. During the last 5 years, around £60 million has been leveraged into the region through the National Affordable Housing Supply Programme. Bolstered by registered social landlords and the Council's resources, it is estimated that total spend will be in excess of £100 million for this period. Close partnership working is achieved through the Council's Development Forum. This brings together representatives from the Adult Health and Social Care Partnership, registered social landlords, the Scottish Government and the Council's Homelessness and Housing Options, Planning and Education Services. Since being established, this forum has resulted in year-on-year increased investment. This has provided more affordable homes for local people, the creation of new jobs, repurposing of derelict sites and reductions in fuel poverty. The future focus for the Strategic Housing Investment Plan will be to continue to build on this work to date, while also supporting new priorities. Building energy efficient homes within walking distance of local services will help to tackle climate change. Houses and jobs will be created to help retain the region's working age population. Bespoke properties will be built for some of the region's most vulnerable people. Strong partnership working has been and will continue to be key to the successful delivery of these outcomes.
Hello, my name is Stephen Jack and I've been chair of the Dumfries and Galloway CLD Partnership for 3 years now. Within Dumfries and Galloway, we're very fortunate to have a strong CLD sector with partners working closely together to increase the life chances for our young people, help build stronger and more resilient communities, ensure our most vulnerable get the support they need, and increase learning opportunities for all. I hope you find our end-of-year evaluative and qualitative report of interest, and I would just like to thank all our partners and volunteers who are contributing to this work on the ground, particularly through these challenging times. To help further demonstrate some of the impacts our work is having on the ground, please listen to the thoughts of some of our learners in the following short clip. Thank you.
It was nice. It was nice that the children saw that us as parents had achieved something as well, not just them. And they all stood with us.
And like when Ryan was that proud because we were getting a certificate. So, and there was only a few of us.
Yeah.
And he was that proud that he got to get up in front of everybody and
show his mum off.
Hi, I'm Sheena Horner and I'm the chair of the Economic Leadership Group in the region. Hi, I'm David Bradbury and I'm representing the third sector for the Economic Leadership Group. So Sheena, did you have any regular meetings, and how many meetings did you have for the Economic Leadership?
The group meets at least 4 times a year, and the last face-to-face meeting was in February, which was pre-lockdown, but we're having our next meeting via Teams on the 12th of November. We have 19 active members of the group representing a wide range of private and third sector businesses, and attendance at the meetings is extremely good.
That's great. So it's got good attendance and participants at the meetings as well, so they're always participating in it.
Aye, any members who became unable to play an active part in the group have easily been replaced by other businesses. The membership has remained fairly consistent since I took over the chair in 2019, with only 4 members being replaced, and all members actively contribute.
That's great. So what were the main things that you were working on in kind of the work plan for the year?
The Economic Leadership Group has a defined role in championing, coordinating and scrutinising the implementation of the Regional Economic Strategy. We work together to promote actions to drive this strategy by engaging with the private and third sectors and identifying and promoting new strategic opportunities to support economic growth. The group have recently focused on promoting new strategic opportunities, and the main work has been providing private sector input to a collaborative bid with the Dumfries and Galloway College, supporting a bid to reduce carbon emissions.
Fantastic. So did you manage to achieve what everything was set on in your work plans?
Yeah, we have a great engagement from members of the group. The broad membership has enabled us to identify lead businesses in key economic sectors for the region that could contribute to an economic strategy focused on reducing carbon emissions and delivering on the climate emergency declaration. The bid has been successful at round 1, and we are awaiting the outcome of the next phase.
It's great to hear. So did any of the members do any training development, or was there any development workshop that the group attended?
We have a Microsoft team for the group and share opportunities for professional development via this. Several members have attended workshops and conferences on reducing carbon emissions. The last meeting in February was combined with a development session, seeing in practice how the college have worked to reduce carbon emissions. We have members with key strategic roles with South of Scotland Enterprise and who lead Dumfries and Galloway Council's plan for carbon reduction. This enables the group to provide key strategic support for growing and sustainable net zero economy.
That's great, Sheena. So have you got any other messages about your group that you would like to share with the CPP board today?
The Economic Leadership Group consists of a wide range of businesses and sectors in the region. Each member puts their business to one side and gives up their personal time to help advise and drive the region's economy. We all really care strongly about this region and how we can help. We aren't just a group, but have developed into a great network whom we turn to when looking for help and advice. I'm really proud of what this group has grown to become and the collaboration that has happened since taking over the chair of the group.
Thanks, Sheena. Thanks for your chat today.
Welcome to Dumfries and Galloway College. We are a key member of the Local Employability and Skills Partnership. Our role within that is to be vice chairs with our partners so that we can take a coordinated approach within our local area. The aim of what we're doing is we're working in coordination to provide employment and skills to meet the needs of local people. And in terms of that, we're working to help those seeking employment, work with our employers and work with business groups. In 2019, one of the highlights was we held a development workshop during which we were able to work with a wide range of stakeholders. During this year, we have established a new terms of reference, and in terms of that, the membership has been agreed with the community. As a result of the planning board in 2019, we now meet on a monthly basis instead of meeting 4 times a year so that we can respond to local needs.
Hello, I'm Norma Austin-Hart, Chief Executive of Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway, and I am a member of the Local Employability and Skills Partnership and of the subgroup which is currently developing the new 3-year action plan. This will be discussed by the wider group at the next full partnership meeting. We have held workshops to develop our action plans previously, but now we have a Microsoft Team channel for the group, and we are able to meet and share opportunities via this medium.
Hello, I'm Melanie McEwen from the Employability and Skills team with Dumfries and Galloway Council. With a real focus on employability due to the impact of COVID-19 restrictions, the partnership is currently focusing on providing the strategic direction, facilitating collaboration to coordinate all the additional support that's becoming available. The partnership is striving to collaborate and coordinate effective use of resources and funding to have maximum impact to help local people seeking employment and local employers looking for a skilled workforce. Local employability partnerships exist across Scotland to support collective leadership and a shared commitment across partners to develop a more aligned approach to local and national employability support in Scotland. Working to support people into fair work and with good quality jobs is central to supporting the development of an inclusive and sustainable local economy and will be central to
Okay, is it? I think something's gone wrong there. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you fine, Chair. I think that's just the end of the video.
Oh, right, it just tailed out. Okay. I understand, Kirsty, that some of the young people who are in Easterbrook Hall have some questions on the reports. Now, not everybody who presented is actually present, so we would have to feed back comments and queries if somebody is not present. But we do have Sheena Horner from the Economic Leadership Group, Andy Ferguson, Chair of the IJB, Norma Hart, and Rob Davidson, who's the Chair of the Employability and Skills Partnership. So they may be able to pick up some of the questions. So, Kirsty, can you ask the young people to put forward their questions and comments, please?
Yes, Chair, we can do. Chair, I think they might have changed their mind. Oh, no, hold on 1 second, sorry. Bailey might be about to ask one. Whilst Bailey, oh, thanks Bailey.
Sorry. What are each of the groups doing to tell people that communities about what they've delivered?
Does anybody want to pick that up? I think actually the video is one of the reasons we were keen to have the videos, was because it's recorded. It is an easier way of people are wanting to come in and find out, rather than having to find the papers, but actually listen to the videos and get some idea what's being done. But I see that Andy wants to come back with from the IGB. Andy.
Absolutely, and it's actually a really good question, because Dumfries and Galloway IGB over 3 years ago now instigated their review, which they're required to do by statute. We did it in public, and that has grown arms and legs, so to speak. Until last year, the review, we housed over 200 people in a hotel in Dumfries. Clearly this year, we're still putting together the annual report, annual review, but the delivery of the publishing of that document will be different this year, and we're looking to have an even bigger online session as well, and that's coming at the planning stages. So it's actually another good question for me, because I'm acutely aware at this moment in time the IGB has lots of people there representing older adults and older people and some specific groupings. But technically, we look at services from age 16, and I know there's a crossover there between us and the Children's Services Group. So I think there's a gap to be plugged there, and under advisement, I'll take back and actually see if there's a space for an advisory member to represent people ages 16 to 25 on that group. And of course, naturally, we'd probably be coming to one of the to the Youth Council maybe to nominate someone. It's not a promise. I'll obviously have to say it's under advisement, but I'll certainly be suggesting that. And there's a few IGB members currently on this forum with different hats on, and I'm hoping that they would, I think, would support me when we take that forward. So, Bailey, I think your question is, at least in terms of health and social care, we do an annual review which is made public. And just so watch this space, okay? And you'll get the one for this year very soon. Thank you.
I think Norma, you also wanted to respond to Bailey's question.
Thanks, Elaine. Yes. Well, I was going to respond on behalf of the Local Employability and Skills Partnership in the absence of anyone else from the partnership at this meeting. If there is anyone, please speak now. But I did want to say that, like Andy, it's a really good question. We've spent the last 2 or 3 months in various meetings developing the strategy, the aims, the objectives. So it will be finished in the very near future, and there will be communication about the strategy. But I would want to reassure the youth councillors here that there has been input in the strategy development, particularly from developing the young workforce, which you might have heard about. There's a big concern about youth employment, youth unemployment as a result of COVID. And so there has been much discussion about that and input from youth-related organisations. The other point to make is about Kickstart, which you might have heard about. It's a government-funded programme that we hope will be starting in the new year, which will offer 6-month employment jobs, 6-month job placements in many different kinds of employment backgrounds for young people in particular. And the local employability partnership is much involved in that. But I take the point, and I think communication more proactively through our own forum and directly probably with the Youth Council would be a good idea in the near future. So I'll take that back to the partnership. Thank you.
Thanks, Norman. Yeah, I've got a message here from Councillor Davidson, who chairs the Local Employability Partnership, saying that he supports Norma's comments. Councillor Jane Maitland is wondering whether or not Bailey has a specific pieces of information that he wants to know about. And also Helen Cowan has got a question as well. Helen.
Hello. Yes, not also a great question, but this is a different question. Just going back to a comment made about that in the housing report, there was a comment that we'd be building houses within walking distance to local services. And then I think there were comments made at the last CPP meeting about the difficulty of funding public transport and the increasing importance of community transport initiatives. Is there a kind of groundswell that public transport is just not working for us as a region? I was surprised to hear they needed to be within walking distance, not on a bus route, for example.
I think Amy isn't here to answer that question, but I think that was a Scottish Government initiative that everybody to try and promote people living within 20 minutes of walking distance of facilities and so on. I think rather than the council one. With regard to the transport issue, we do have concerns about public transport in Dumfries and Galloway is pretty fragile, and that's one of the many reasons that we need to think about community transport in greater depth and other ways of enabling people to get around, because the traditional sort of bus services are very, very fragile. I've got Lindsay Thompson.
Chair, just could I, before Lindsay comes in, Bailey would like to just come back to Councillor Maitland's question around if there's something specific.
Yeah, please, Bailey.
Sorry, just while we're on the topic of transport, I was just wondering, do we know when the free bus travel for young people will get put in action?
Is anybody able to answer that at all?
Chair, I'm happy to pick that up. Obviously, we don't have a representative here from Swestrans, but I think that's a really good question, and we'll certainly take that back to them and ensure there's an answer provided. And just while I'm speaking, I guess one of the ways that the Community Planning Partnership tries to improve information and communication about all of these groups is indeed through an annual report that comes here, but also on our website we try and link in to whatever information, whatever Twitter feeds, etc. each of these partnerships has in place. And I think we're seeing an improvement in that over the last couple of years. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Lindsay Thompson from the Youth Council has a question.
So you were talking about, like, with looking more at the employability and skill partnership, you said stuff like about like a 6-month job period. Like, as a young person, I've never heard anything about any of this, so it's a bit confusing for me. So it's like, how are you actually going to get it through to young people, and how are you going to make them all aware of it? And how will you help support people on 0-hour, young people on 0-hour contracts? Because especially in COVID, with coronavirus, it's a big factor, because some people rely on so many hours, but because of it, they're prioritising older people who need, they categorise as need more money. But then the younger people who are moved out, living on their own, or are trying to support their family as well, it's a bit of an unfair balance. So how are you going to move forward supporting young people in that sort of situation as well? And along with with the 6 month, how will that work out as well? Because that's 6, so they'll get is it 6 months they'll get a job for, and then what happens after that? What happens after that 6 month time frame? Because you can't guarantee you might not be able to guarantee they get to stay on or further employment. So it's a bit of a rough subject there, because yeah.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay, for the question. You won't have heard about Kickstart officially yet, because it hasn't been launched yet. And I don't think it's telling tales out of school to say that the Department of Work and Pensions is still struggling to get the detailed criteria and guidance on who can participate. I don't mean young people, I mean organisations and employers, and how they should participate to ensure that young people get a quality work experience and the quality standards are met. There's a lot going on in the background. I can't speak to any of that because I'm not privy to the DWP inner workings. But I do know that there's a weekly meeting at the moment where those organisations like ourselves, who are hoping to be gateways between the employers and young people, once this does roll out, we're meeting with the DWP weekly just to be kept up to speed. I can absolutely assure you that as soon as that programme gets the green light, we will be out there shouting about it because it is a really major opportunity. I can't answer your detailed questions about, you know, will there be a job at the end of the 6 months? How will we access it? Because it's not known yet. But I'm happy to, again, through Reagan, keep the Youth Council posted on the work, on the development of the Kickstart programme. And on your second point about 0 hours contract, that's a much bigger and complex question. Again, I think that the best way to handle that would be to I keep going back to Reagan. Reagan and I are going to have lots of things to discuss. But I think what would be useful is for you to get expert information and guidance on the wider question of 0 hours contracts and so on. So I think probably that would be about gathering together a couple of experts and getting them to you to explain what's going on. So again, I'll liaise with Reagan on that.
Thanks, Norman. I see Andy Ferguson wants to speak too.
Thanks very much, Leader. Just a couple of things. I think it was Helen actually was asking about public transport and the new housing. Now, until quite recently, I was housing was part of the portfolio and moved a bit in the council. My understanding is that the Scottish Government scheme, part of it was to encourage activity amongst people, to encourage people to walk and cycle more. And I think that's why there's a relevance to it rather than that. I'm not wanting to answer for Jamie, but I think I'm fairly certain that's the answer you would get. The other thing I was just going to ask is I think I'm going to liaise through Reagan to engage with the IGB to how we can engage better with you, speak to you. I think there's a misconception in the region that the IGB is about older people. It's actually 16, ages 16 onwards, unless there's in certain circumstances. So I'm particularly interested about young carers, for example. So there's a lot of things we could talk to you about, a lot of things we can take your views on, and I'd be very happy to engage with you. So if it's okay with the Youth Council, I would be happy to liaise through Reagan to arrange some sort of meeting with you.
Thanks, Andy. I've got a message here from Jane Maitland in the chat saying this was good feedback and that more information needs to be got out on transport and employment issues. And this forum is about improving collaboration and information. And this is really useful indication of a gap. And I think I absolutely concur with that. I should say that the council currently is looking at our communications strategy because we realise we don't always communicate as well as we should. And I think one of the things that we will need to consider is how we communicate better with the public about what the council does and engage better with people's views. Can I see? I've got Norma has a question.
Thanks, Elaine. Me again. It's really just an offer, a quick offer to Sheena Horner. I believe Sheena's is here today. Very interested to hear about the Economic Leadership Group. Sheena might be interested to know that at Third Sector, Dumfries and Galloway, we run a group called COGITS, which stands for Chief Officer Group in the Third Sector. And we have upwards of 20 members who regularly attend. These are decision makers in the third sector in Dumfries and Galloway. I think it'd be very useful if Sheena or someone from the Economic Leadership Group would come along to a COGITS meeting and just update us on the work that they're doing and how they might work together with COGITS.
Sheila, do you want to respond to Mark Norman? Yes, she says in the chat that she'd be more than happy to do that. And she, unfortunately, like many of us, is having problems with the connectivity this morning. If there are no more questions, I'll move on to agenda item 5, which is the annual report on the Local Outcomes Improvement Plan. This is our annual report on progress in achieving the 8 outcomes in our LOIP. It demonstrates progress across a range of issues, and the project showcase great work that is taking place across the region. It has been circulated to everyone, so I would invite questions, and Liz is here to answer any questions that anyone may have. Any questions on the Local Outcome Improvement Plan for Liz? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. I just hope it's not because people are... right, Helen, you have a question.
Hello, sorry, me again. I'm aware that this is obviously a report for the year finished, but I noticed that the referrals to the CAMS was up so highly in 1920, and I can only assume it's going to go up again. Obviously, when we take into account the effect of the pandemic, is that something that's being taken into account? I'm sure it is, but it was quite noticeable the increase last year, and it's only going to go up again, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the data being provided for this current year will obviously be collated and made available publicly. We do have some delays in getting some of the data. As you'll see, there's a few gaps there which will be filled in just as soon as the data is published. And yes, what happens is the partner responsible for that particular performance indicator will be reporting on that to their substantive forum. So that would be, I think, the Health and Social Care Partnership. And you'll see later on in the agenda that they have reported some headline information about the last business year. But there is more data to come, which is being developed and worked through.
Thanks, Liz.
Okay, thank you.
I've got Andy.
Thanks, Elaine. Helen, the IGB and the partnership and the NHS, of course, have taken mental health and wellbeing extremely seriously, because it's probably, we talk about the silent enemy as COVID, but the real silent enemy here is health and wellbeing in the medium to longer term. We're seeing the immediate effects right now, but I would suggest that the eyes are very, very clearly on how we deliver services. And I know maybe Mark or somebody might want to come in from the council, how we're putting some resources into young people at school, for example. And I think, to answer your question, yes, it's very high on the agenda from here onwards. And I do appreciate this is a historic report, but I think Liz is right. I think there's some discussion about this later on in the agenda. So the answer to your question is, yes, it's very high on the agenda. It's probably as high as it can be at this moment in time.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy.
Any further questions on that?
Chair, no.
Somebody's speaking, but I can't see who it is. Okay, if there's no further questions on that, and I'm not seeing anything coming up in the chat, we move on to item 6, which is the annual report on the locality plan and food sharing. This is our annual report on progress in achieving the 4 outcomes in our locality plan. When we think of the importance of food and the impact of food insecurity over recent months, it is clear that our ability to respond to the COVID crisis so well was in part because we had such a sound foundation to build on, and particularly an established network of community providers. Next year's report is likely to be very comprehensive, because obviously there has been an awful lot more work to report on during the COVID period. Ingrid Gemmell is here to answer any questions on the locality plan and food sharing. So if you have any comments or questions. Anything? Can I? Helen, I see you. Yeah, Helen, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sorry. I feel like I've got too many questions. It was just, hi Ingrid. It was just something about the numbers for the on the welfare crisis grants, and I'm quite sure it's just a sort of reporting thing, but it says that there's £1 million allocated, and the number of grants given out suggest it adds up to about just under £400,000. So I was just wondering where the other £600,000 was allocated, and then similarly on the participatory budgeting, it looks like about 82,000 of the 200,000 was given out. So it might just, as I say, it might just be a quirk of the reporting format, but it just jumped out to me.
Okay, I'll check that, Helen, and get back to you if that's okay.
Okay, thanks, Ingrid.
Any other questions or queries? Not seeing anything. Okay, I think Ingrid, you got off lightly there.
Thank you.
Next year, I'm sure there will be a lot more questions for me.
I'm sure it's going to be an extensive report next year, I think.
When we go over the experience we've had over the past year, I'm sure there will be a lot of questions and interest in that. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Item 7 is the annual report from community planning working groups. Usually we would have received an annual report on each of the working groups throughout the year, reported to us by the executive group. However, as we all know, this has been a very different year for these groups. So instead we have a short video to watch that gives us an overview. During this video, you will see that the Levantine, which has provided us with delicious, provided somebody with delicious baklava. I suspect those of us who are remote are not getting it. But I'm not sure whether it's there, but I certainly hope that those people who are in Easterbrook Hall are enjoying their baklava and are very thankful to Abdulrahman and Ismail for supplying them. We'll run the video, and those of you who have goodies to enjoy can enjoy your goodies.
Hello, my name is Kirsty Peden and I'm Chair of the Participation and Engagement Working Group, and I'm pleased to give you a few of the highlights from our work during 2019 and 20. During that time we had 4 meetings of the working group. We had moved to a combined sort of workshop and formal meeting type format, and I'm pleased to report that that has worked well for us, and that we have had good attendance from across the partnership, and always a contribution from NHS Health and Social Care, Third Sector DG, DGC and Police and Fire. It seems slightly surreal to report that one of the highlights of our year was that we had created an online space to share information, share resources and to communicate easily across all of the partners. We had developed what we call our Knowledge Hub, hosted by the Improvement Service and developed by a graduate placement that was hosted by Dumfries and Galloway Council with a focus on improving our community engagement. And so that site has 65 members from across all partner organisations, all of whom have previously participated in training and that share a common understanding, language and enthusiasm for involving communities in decisions that affect them. Our working group has a remit for staff training in this particular area and has continued to develop that during 2019. We had 30 staff from across 8 different partner organisations completed a identifying and managing consultation risks workshop led by the Consultation Institute, who have provided support to a number of partners in relation to consultation in particular. The working group work plan also includes oversight of the PEN, the Participation and Engagement Network, which is administered by the NHS on behalf of partners, and that has continued to be a priority area of work for the working group, always seeking to improve membership of the PEN and to encourage a greater representation of our community in Dumfries and Galloway. The working group, I suppose, key messages when speaking with colleagues for the CPP is to ensure that the relationships continue to grow and develop, and that has been one of the highlights of our work together, is that we have connections across people who are involved, particularly in this area of work, and that staff feel they've got support. They have increased knowledge because of the training, because of our sharing of resources, and just greater skills and experience in this area. And that now we can share that across our organisations in a wider sense. As we all know, I think that the need and desire of our organisations to involve citizens in decisions that affect them grows and continues to grow in all sectors. So thanks very much, and we'll keep our work going during this year.
Hello everyone, my name is Jim Hiddleston and I am the Vice Chair of the Dumfries and Galloway Tackling Poverty Reference Group. Together with other volunteers from our group, we feed into the activities of the Community Planning Partnership through our support to the Tackling Poverty Coordination Group, which myself and Jeanette Byers, Chair of the Tackling Poverty Reference Group, both attend. This year has, I'm sure that you will agree, been very different from any other year which we have experienced. We are very supportive of all the actions of our Community Planning Partnership have delivered through the dedicated response to the COVID-19 pandemic which Dumfries and Galloway Council led on, especially in relation to the large amount of high quality, informative and colourful, which definitely kept our spirits up, newsletter which we continually received through. Since April this year, our community planning partners have continued to deliver all of our anti-poverty projects, as well as dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic on a daily basis. We successfully completed our third phase of our PB funding, Your Community, Your Vote, Unicide, with a total of 52 organisations within our region receiving funding to tackle poverty and inequalities within their local communities. As part of our COVID-19 response, we developed new methods to provide free school meals to the pupils who were registered for this service through a choice based on model of either collecting food boxes, having them delivered directly to their home, or the option of receiving a direct payment. This really helped the most vulnerable families, and this project has further evolved to now being the delivery model for the support during all of our school holidays, with all families registered for this service receiving a direct cash payment for both the October and the December 2020 school holidays. We have also appointed new project partners to complete a new report on poverty and deprivation in Dumfries and Galloway. This report will help us to complete our evaluation on the delivery of our first anti-poverty strategy and action plan, and also to develop new ways to tackle both poverty and inequalities after our first strategy ends on the 30th December 2020. We are currently completing the first phase of this evaluation through consultation sessions, and the second phase, which will concentrate on shaping our new delivery model moving forward, will begin in early November, with all project partners and their stakeholders throughout the region. In addition to all of the above, we are due to begin the development of a new round of PB funding, and we are also continuing to help with supporting the consultation on the mid-term review of Dumfries and Galloway's Council Plan 2017 to 2022. Two of our members also completed the first evidence session of the National Social Advisory Renewal Board consultation about the impact of COVID-19, and we will continue to support this process over the next few months. All of our group members are also in the final stages of completing our SQV in volunteering. All in all, it has been an incredibly busy year, and we'd like to thank all of our community planning partners for all their support, especially this time, especially from Mark and Wendy, who have been in touch with us throughout to give extra support whenever needed, and a listening ear which has been very welcome. We look forward to continuing to work with all of you moving into 2021, and keep safe, everyone.
Any comments? Sorry. Is somebody speaking? All right, okay. So I'm inviting any questions or comments to feedback to the working groups. We've got Kirsty, who's the chair of the Participation and Engagement Group, present with us, and also Liz, who is the chair of the Syrian Refugees Resettlement Project Board. But any other questions, for example, on the Tackling Poverty Reference Group, can be fed back to that group. And I see that, we have Kirsty saying that Bailey Wright, our youth councillor, has a question.
Thank you. Do Dumfries and Galloway Council support organisations who help in anti-poverty, like Lift D&G, Summerhill Community Centre and Dumfries YMCA? If not, another question. Through the anti-poverty group, how do you get involved in anti-poverty work? Like, if you're one of those groups, how do you get involved with the anti-poverty work?
I think in answer to Bailey's first question, yes, the council is involved in working with groups like Lift. For example, we're transferring a property to Lift. That was just discussed at the area committee this week. So we are working with a number of different groups. But would somebody be able to say a bit more about how, if somebody wanted to be involved in the Tackling Poverty Reference Group, how they could go about doing that? Anybody able to answer that question?
I'm happy to pick that one up. The group that this board is responsible for, the Tackling Poverty Coordination Group, brings together a whole range of organisations, and within each of these organisations there are opportunities for volunteers, and particularly people who've got lived experience of poverty, to join in and work with the group. So for Dumfries and Galloway Council, there's something called the Reference Group, and that group, led by, supported by Mark Malloy and Wendy Jesson, are looking at how it goes forward, and one part of that will be about recruiting some extra people to get involved in the discussions. And what happens with that particular group and the council is that they're asked their thoughts about what services should be delivering for people who've got perhaps financial poverty, or there's different types of poverty. And so they'll be asked their thoughts, and they comment and influence, I think, and that's a really important part, that what they say actually makes a difference to how council services are run. These volunteers are also involved in our community planning group, and the other organisations that are part of that include the Health Board, the Citizens Advice Service, Third Sector, Dumfries and Galloway. So there's a whole range, Dumfries and Galloway Housing Partnership. And I think one of the things that's happened in the last few months, so that'll be next year's annual report, is that Social Security and the Department of Work and Pensions have joined, and they're particular organisations that clearly have a big impact on poverty in our region. So it's really good that they have joined the community planning group, because that way we'll be able to have more influence and better discussions with them. Thank you.
Thanks. I see Jane Maitland unfortunately had a question for item 5, but the technology has thrown her off. But I think you have a question on this as well, Jane.
I do, Elaine. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, it's not in some ways so much a question. It's just that it's rather a powerful reflection, particularly from Mr. Hiddleston's input, about how important it is that we provide help to individuals. You know, through our work with youth work, putting people in to support young people in school for their mental health, youth workers, and supporting people through the welfare and benefits team, actual real people reaching out to help. We've got to not lose track of the, I know this is about a strategic forum, but it really comes down to actual people helping directly one another. And I know that you know, Norma's work is about facilitating and mobilising the voluntary effort for that as well. I'm sorry, it's not really a question, but it just comes through so clearly and powerfully that if you reach out and offer a little bit of a helping hand, people are lifted. Sorry, Chairman.
Thanks, Jane. I think Youth Councillor Lindsay Thompson also has a question.
Going forward, how are you going to include young people in the tackling poverty, especially because I don't feel like young people get as much representation with it, because there's no communication with young people about it, because there are a lot of young people in poverty themselves, if that makes sense. So, there's people, obviously, they live with a family, they've got school meals if they're entitled to it up until they leave school, obviously. But then you've got people that are still in the category of being young, 16 plus, if they've moved out for whatever reason, or if they've had to, if they've moved out, what are you going to do to, how are you going to communicate with them about tackling poverty, and how are you going to get their voices represented as well? Because I feel like there's a bit of lack of communication with young people especially. Thank you.
Yep, and I would certainly see the Youth Council having a role in that. I think you've clearly picking up on some of the issues facing young people in Dumfries and Galloway, and I'm sure that Mark and Reagan and a lot of the work that the Council's doing around, say, the youth participation strategy is designed to do some of that. So yes, there's certainly work taking place just now about what the approach is going forward into the new year. And I'm sure greater involvement of wider groups of people will very much be part of that.
Helen, I see your hand is up. I'm not sure if that's just historic or whether you have a question. Okay, thanks.
Okay, we do have a question Bailey in the hall from Bailey, so I'd like to hand over to you.
Sorry, it's not... Sorry, it's not more the question, it's more just to go on to Lindsay's point. Also, if not a lot of people know, Youth Council have got certain action plans for their wards, and that some wards, I'll just be talking off of me and Murray's, we have got tackling poverty, have we not? Yeah, we've got in our action plan to tackle poverty in Mid and Upper Nithsdale, just for everyone's information for that. Yeah.
And certainly, I think one of the issues that we will see, there's new data being put together, and that will help us in one element about just seeing some of the factual things that are happening in different wards and the different picture that's in different wards. But I think of equal importance, and picking up Councillor Maitland's point, is actually what people are telling us. So the people who live there, the people who are experiencing these things, you know, statistics can tell you some things, but it's actually about what people are experiencing, particularly in rural areas, that has a much greater impact on what services we do, how we change services in each area as well. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Andy.
Thanks again, Elaine. Liz, through you, Chair. Liz, I'm wondering, and I know Mark's sitting in this as well, the officer member working group looking at the historical or the current policy and how it's performed and working a way forward into the to formulate a new anti-poverty strategy for the next coming 5 years is active just now, and I'm actually wondering if there's an opportunity to get the Youth Council to nominate somebody to come onto that as an advisor now, rather than you know, when we're still at the putting together stages. I may be talking to school here, but I think it's personally, I think it's a good idea, and we'd certainly get the young view in there from a young councillor, as opposed to, with all due respect, Mark and some of his team.
I'm sure we'll be happy to pick up some conversations about that, not just perhaps a link in with the member officer working group of the council, but the wider community planning grouping, and about the engagement sessions that are taking place about the next approach after the end of this strategy. Thank you.
Thanks. And I see Councillor Murray-Thompson has a question.
I would just like to ask what organisations and groups are on the Equality and Working Group, and are there any representatives for the age groups, like the youth and the elderly?
Thank you. Yes, again, happy to pick that up. So there's probably too many organisations to list for you, because we do have representative groups from the third sector for all of the protected characteristics. For the age one, it is the over 55s group, and Tracy Wood from Youth Services, who's the link back into the Youth Council and other forums in youth services. And certainly one of the reasons that we have again expanded the membership over the last year is that I think organisations increasingly recognise the importance of different groups, and about how there's some similarities, but there are some differences between what we call the protected characteristics. And it's important that the needs of each individual group are met by partners across all the different spheres.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions or comments? As I say, these points will be fed back to the different working groups. Okay, if we can go on to item 8, which is the current strategic issues. This is the usual update on the plans and strategies that contribute to the local outcomes improvement plan. And as usual, I will go through them in order to allow members the opportunity to comment or ask questions on each one individually. So if we can start with the anti-poverty strategy, do members have any questions or comments on the anti-poverty strategy? Norm.
Thanks, Elaine. Just a short question regarding the paragraph 1.4, poverty and deprivation within D&G and research. We are aware at Third Sector, Dumfries and Galloway, of the online event on Thursday, 3rd of December. I suppose the straightforward question is, are we now free to promote this within the sector through our social media and online platforms?
Yes, would be, I'm sure, delighted to have that awareness of the publication of the data. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Not seeing anybody else coming up with questions on this report. Right, Helen.
Hello. Yes, section 1.5, participatory budgeting. obviously it's been going on for a couple of years now, and I know it's went online this year, I think, which was excellent. See that the steering group is going to determine the voting methodology. I'm just wondering if the learnings from the pandemic and the new all of our new improved understanding in to make sure that the participatory really gets out there and does what it's supposed to do, which is let everybody vote.
Yes, I think that's a very excellent point. Clearly, we introduced online voting the last time, and it does seem to have been successful. So you're correct that many PB activities over the country are looking at different methodologies. And I think importantly, again, given the subject matter particularly, that if it is going to be online because it's being done at a time when there's still COVID restrictions, we'll need to make sure that there is access to technologies so that it doesn't necessarily rely on people being able to vote from their own home. In the last time, for example, we promoted free access at libraries, but depending on whatever the COVID restrictions are, that might or might not be possible. And also, obviously, there's opportunities through schools and other places for increased technology to be available to people. So yes, the steering group will certainly take all of that into account when they're deciding how the voting will be done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can we go on to the Children's Services Plan now? Excuse me. Do members have any comments on queries or on the Children's Services Plan? Well, if they're not, we can then go on to the Community Justice Outcome Improvement Plan, and I'll invite any questions or comments on that. Doesn't seem to be, so move on to the CLD Partner Strategic Plan and invite comments or queries on that. And the next item is the COVID Recovery Action Plan. Any questions on that? If not, the Employability and Skills Plan. Any comments or queries on the Employment and Skills Plan? Just hoping that the reason that there's no questions is not because nobody can hear me. Okay, the Health and Social Care Strategic Plan.
Can I come in, Elaine? Just to stress, obviously, we're just starting the process of engagement with the members of the public, carers and people who are actually using the services. We've made it absolutely abundantly clear the IGB want this to be driven from the bottom upwards, not from the top downwards. So I really urge everybody here who's representing an organisation who can make a contribution to make that contribution. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. That's just a plea to get people, to ask people to get involved. Right, something coming up. Yeah, just says that they can hear me. That's good. The next one is the Local Development Plan, LDB2. Any questions or queries on that? Jane Maitland.
Sorry, I'm muted. I'm back here. Sorry, I'm struggling and I can't find the place. Elaine, this is about sort of movement on, really. It's not the current LDP it's moving on. We were all sitting in planning yesterday, and as you know, I think probably, given that we declared an emergency, a climate emergency, and interestingly, the Youth Council also considers this to be something that we must deal with as quickly as possible. Do you think that we should be shunting along the LDP3 process in order to reflect what we have put in as a priority number 5? Because there's no doubt about it, we are going to come up against big tensions against what people are expecting and what our planning policies actually state at the moment. And I see that the whole business of aligning community and spatial planning is it's the flavour of the month. But if we don't get on and do it, and maybe push the timetable along, we're going to end up with an awful lot of extremely frustrated and angry people.
I mean, my understanding was that the intention of government was that the local development plan should be refreshed on a 10-year cycle now. I don't think there's anybody from planning here really to answer the question in more detail, but I think that was the intention, that it would be a 10-year plan this time. However, obviously things change a great deal within 10 years. And again, because I'm not a planner, I don't know what facility there is to change some of the strategies, or whether we can amend our strategies during the course of a local development plan. It's maybe something we need to go back to Shona and see how that can be done, because obviously there can be a conflict between the traditional planning policies and our need to respond to the climate emergency.
Exactly so.
But that's maybe something we can take up with the planners to see how, I know there are issues about trees, for example, and other aspects of developments which may have an adverse effect on climate change and are not currently taken into consideration. Right. Liz wants to come back on that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Certainly the elements in this update about the community-led local place plans will feature on your agenda in March, because we are doing some work about our locality hubs. South of Scotland Enterprise is also doing some work about community-led action plans, so it's our intention to bring you an update on that in March, and we can certainly ensure that perhaps in the meantime we send out members information about the current timetable of the LDP3, and that would allow organisations to comment on that and perhaps feed that into the planners. Thank you.
Thank you. So if there's nothing else on LDP2, the final item on this agenda item is the local housing strategy. Do we have any questions or comments on the local housing strategy report? And I'm not seeing anything coming up on that. Okay, so I think we've done what we're required to do in terms of scrutinising and noting progress with the strategies and plans. Item 9 is the Community Planning Partnership Board arrangements, and there are a number of aspects to our arrangements presented in this report, which I'm going to suggest we take one by one. Our improvement plan progress over the last year and future work is attached in Appendix 1, and so I'd invite members, if they have any questions or comments on the improvement plan progress. Okay, I'm not seeing anything there, so the next item attached at Appendix 2 is the risk register, and asking whether there are any questions on the risk register. I have a nasty feeling I may have missed something on the agenda here, but I'm not sure. Okay, and finally, the proposed arrangements for our board meetings are set out in Appendix 3 and paragraph 2.5. And also, we'd like to encourage any ideas or proposals from members for different approaches to the way in which we conduct our meetings or we present data. So can I ask people, members, if they've got any issues on that? Or any questions or any suggestions, which will be gratefully received. Norma. Sorry. Yeah.
Thanks, Elaine. It just strikes me that by March next year, I think we will want to know the progress that we've made across the partnership on responding to COVID-19. I know that that's perhaps implicitly behind some of the programme bullet points, but I wonder if it just should be explicit. And alongside that, I'm also aware that the Regional Economic Partnership will be delivering the first draft of the Regional Economic Strategy in March next year. And that seems to me, that's a 10-year strategy that has significant implications for groups like the Economic Leadership Group and indeed the Community Planning Partnership Board itself. So again, I wonder if we could identify that as something that we should be aware of and even comment on and influence.
Yes, I would certainly agree that it would be important that the Community Planning Partnership does input into the Regional Economic Strategy, indeed, not just in terms of receiving the draft, but actually being involved in some of the discussions around the way in which that strategy develops.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Certainly, you'll recall at our last meeting, we did touch on the fact that the future arrangements for economic forums and plans are in development in terms of the relationships and the reporting to this board and indeed individual partners. So that item is on the agenda, but certainly very happy to add in explicitly the consultation on the regional economic strategy. And Norma's absolutely right that the COVID update is implicit because by virtue of it being one of the plans and strategies that support the LOIP, you will have an update on that at every meeting. But again, perhaps it's worth just making that an individual item in the agenda. So very happy to pick these up. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems a good idea as we can have no idea now where exactly we will be placed by the next meeting. So, we could be in a third wave if we're really unlucky. But yes, I think it's important that it's actually a specific agenda item, certainly for the near future. Helen, you have a point to make.
Yes, it was just in reference to the sort of ways of working and managing the meetings. Obviously, I'm quite a new member to it, so the volume of pre-work is quite impressive, and it comes out, and there's an enormous amount of pre-reading to be done, and it's given in good time, which is really appreciated. I just don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here as a new person. To me, it's not completely clear always what level of what we're being asked to what's literally for our information and what the partners would appreciate a board or a partnership discussion on, and which ones are being dealt with in more detail by their relevant committees, which I know they've all got as well. So yeah, so this is just me speaking as a new member of the partnership. Maybe it would be easier to be more clear on which is literally just for information and which ones where some discussion would be appreciated.
I think most of them, I think really all of them, are there for discussion and comment. They're not really just there for noting. They are the opportunity for the different partners to comment or discuss should they wish to do so. There's obviously no obligation on people to ask questions if they don't wish to do so. But all of the items are there for discussion because this is where the partners get together to be able to exchange ideas, and it's to encourage that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, are we content to agree the CPP improvement plan for 2021 as set out in Appendix 1? Are we happy to do that? I'll take silence as assent, and to agree the risk register as... That's a comment from Jane to Helen's question there. Jane saying, feel free to pile in to any item. That's certainly the case. Are we happy to agree the risk register as at November 2020 as set out in Appendix 2? And the board meeting dates and work programme as set out in Appendix 3. And also the arrangements for the board meetings as set out in paragraph 2.5. Everybody content with that? Well, finally, can I thank everybody for their attendance and being prepared to soldier on despite the multitude of technical problems we seem to have faced today. It's been considerably worse than many similar meetings I've been at in the past. So I don't know whether this is a general problem that we've got. It's maybe just a problem today with the broadband speeds or something. But thanks very much to everybody for attending. I see Andy wants to say something. Andy.
Thanks very much. Just as hot off the press, only came into my inbox literally seconds ago, that the launch of the research report on poverty and deprivation the current policy is set for Thursday the 3rd of December online at 10 o'clock to 12 noon, and I urge people to come on there. As I say, that was what we discussed earlier. This is the research part. Now we're once this is delivered, we'll then start to move into how we're going to deal with poverty and the way forward from here. So thanks for your letting me back in, Elaine. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that information, Andy. Could I just say that I hope everybody stays safe and well in the coming months, and that we meet again, hopefully with less technological problems the next time, and possibly even in person, though I suppose that we can all live in hope. We don't really know when that's likely to happen. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. And thanks to the youth councillors in particular for attending today.